The world's most chilling unsolved crimes. Throughout history, certain crimes have shocked entire nations and left investigators searching for answers that never came. These cases are not just stories of violence, they are mysteries that have haunted detectives, historians, and the public for decades. Even with modern forensic science, powerful technology, and years of investigation, some of the most disturbing crimes in history remain unsolved. The victims deserve justice, the investigators tried everything they could, and yet the truth still hides somewhere in the shadows. Tonight, we explore some of the most famous unsolved cases in history. Murders that terrified entire cities. Killers who vanished without a trace. And mysteries that continue to puzzle experts even today. These are the crimes that time has not been able to solve. The shadow of Jack the Ripper. In the late 1800s, the streets of London were dark, crowded, and dangerous. The district of Whitechapel was one of the poorest areas in the city, filled with narrow alleys, overcrowded housing, and desperate poverty. In the early morning hours of August 31, 1888, a police officer discovered the body of a woman lying in a street known as Buck's Row. Her name was Mary Ann Nichols. Her throat had been cut. But what horrified investigators even more were the brutal injuries to her body. It quickly became clear that this was not an ordinary murder. Just over a week later, another woman named Annie Chapman was found dead behind a house on Hanbury Street. Her injuries were disturbingly similar to those of the first victim. The city began to panic. Within months, 3 more women were murdered in similar ways. Their bodies were mutilated, their throats cut, and the crimes were carried out with terrifying precision. Whoever committed these murders appeared to vanish into the darkness after each attack. The press soon gave the unknown killer a name that would echo through history. Jack the Ripper. What made the case even stranger were letters sent to newspapers and police, supposedly written by the killer himself. In one letter, the writer mocked investigators and even signed the message with the now infamous name. But despite countless suspects and years of investigation, the true identity of Jack the Ripper was never confirmed. More than a century later, the mystery remains unsolved. The Zodiac Killer. Nearly 80 years after the terror of Whitechapel, another mysterious killer would emerge, this time in the United States. In the late 1960s, a series of attacks in Northern California terrified local communities. The killer targeted young couples, often attacking them while they were parked in quiet, isolated areas. One of the earliest confirmed attacks happened in December 1968, when 2 teenagers were shot while sitting in a car near Vallejo, California. The killer escaped without leaving any clear clues. But what made this case truly unusual were the letters. The murderer began sending messages to newspapers, claiming responsibility for the crimes. Some of these letters included complex coded messages known as ciphers. The writer demanded that newspapers publish the codes on their front pages. If they didn't, he threatened to continue killing. In one letter, he gave himself a name. The Zodiac. For years, investigators tried to crack the ciphers and identify the killer. One code was eventually solved by a schoolteacher and his wife. The message contained chilling words that seemed to show the killer enjoying the fear he created. Despite massive investigations and thousands of suspects, the Zodiac Killer was never definitively identified. Even today, new theories and possible suspects continue to appear, but the mystery remains one of the most famous unsolved crimes in American history. The Black Dahlia murder. On a cold morning in January 1947, a woman walking with her child made a horrifying discovery in Los Angeles. In a vacant lot, the body of a young woman had been left in plain view. The victim was later identified as 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. But what investigators saw at the scene shocked even experienced detectives. Her body had been cut in half and carefully arranged. There were no signs of blood at the location, suggesting the murder had happened somewhere else. The case quickly became a media sensation. Newspapers gave Elizabeth Short a dramatic nickname based on her dark clothing and rumored lifestyle. They called her the Black Dahlia. Hundreds of people were questioned during the investigation, and dozens of individuals even falsely confessed to the crime. Despite intense media attention and years of investigation, the killer was never found. The Black Dahlia case remains one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history. The death of JonBenét Ramsey. In December 1996, a quiet neighborhood in Boulder, Colorado became the center of one of the most controversial investigations in modern history. 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey had been reported missing from her family's home. Her mother discovered a strange ransom note demanding money for the child's safe return. But the situation took a devastating turn when JonBenét's father later discovered her body inside the basement of their own house. The case immediately attracted intense media attention. Investigators struggled with conflicting evidence, public pressure, and widespread speculation about what had really happened that night. Over the years, countless theories emerged about who might have been responsible. But despite decades of investigation, the case has never been officially solved. The Tylenol poisonings. In 1982, a series of sudden deaths shocked the city of Chicago and changed the way consumer products are packaged forever. Several people died after taking capsules of a popular over-the-counter pain reliever. Tests revealed something terrifying. The pills had been laced with cyanide. The victims had purchased the medication from normal stores, meaning anyone could have been affected. Investigators soon realized that someone had tampered with the bottles after they were placed on store shelves. The case caused nationwide panic. Millions of bottles were recalled, and new safety seals and tamper-resistant packaging were introduced across the pharmaceutical industry. Despite one of the largest investigations in U.S. history, the person responsible for the poisonings was never caught. The Hinterkaifeck murders, one of the most disturbing unsolved crimes in European history, took place in Germany in 1922. The victims lived on a remote farm called Hinterkaifeck. Neighbors became suspicious when the family suddenly stopped appearing in the nearby village. When investigators finally entered the property, they discovered something horrifying. 6 members of the family had been murdered. Even more disturbing were the strange clues surrounding the case. Days before the murders, the homeowner had reported hearing footsteps in the attic. There were also mysterious footprints in the snow leading toward the house, but none leading away. Investigators also discovered that someone had continued feeding the farm animals after the murders, suggesting the killer may have remained at the property for days. Despite extensive investigations and many suspects, the case was never solved. The Villisca Axe murders. In 1912, the quiet town of Villisca, Iowa was shaken by a brutal crime. One night, someone entered a house while a family slept inside. By morning, 8 people had been murdered, including 6 children. The killer used an axe found inside the home. The crime scene was chaotic and confusing. Windows were covered, mirrors were hidden, and the weapon had been cleaned and placed carefully in the house. Several suspects were investigated, and one man was even tried for the murders. But he was later acquitted. To this day, no one has been officially convicted for the Villisca Axe murders. The Setagaya family killings. In December 2000, a shocking crime occurred in a quiet residential neighborhood in Tokyo. A family of 4 was murdered inside their home. The crime scene contained an unusual amount of evidence. The killer left behind fingerprints, clothing, and even DNA. Investigators believe the attacker remained inside the house for several hours after the murders, using the family's computer and eating food from their kitchen. Despite one of the largest investigations in Japanese history, the killer has never been identified. The case continues to puzzle investigators more than 2 decades later. The Isdal Woman mystery. In 1970, hikers in a remote valley in Norway discovered a partially burned body. The woman had no identification, and all labels had been removed from her clothing. Police soon uncovered a strange and complicated mystery. Suitcases linked to the woman were found at a train station. Inside were wigs, coded notes, and multiple passports under different names. Investigators believed she had traveled across Europe using false identities. Some theories suggested she might have been a spy during the Cold War. But despite years of investigation, the true identity of the Isdal woman was never confirmed. The assassination of Jill Dando. In 1999, British television presenter Jill Dando was shot outside her home in London. The killing shocked the United Kingdom. Dando was one of